Exodus chapter 15 verse 22. Then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Okay, so now Moses leading, yes, we know Moses leading, but remember the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So they would have, especially later on, we clearly see how they just always will follow that, especially after their sin. So they're moving away from the Red Sea into the wilderness of Shur. And the other thing is what they did not find there, and was going to be a continuous problem for them, and that is a lack of water. Now 3 days no human can go 3 days without water. We just can't go 3 days without water. We need to drink water. Now that does not then imply that for 3 days they were not drinking water. They would have had drinking water with them. But now their water that they had with them is starting to run out, and they can't find any more water. Verse 23. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. So after 3 days of not being able to find any water, their water is getting low. They got to a place where there is water, but the problem is they could not drink. This would have been like bitter, brackish water, right? So they could not drink it. And so they gave whatever the name was of this lake or whatever they found there, water they found there, they changed the name and they gave it now this name Marah, which means ultimately that it was bitter. The water is bitter. Verse 24. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" So this is not the first time they're grumbling in front of the Red Sea with Pharaoh behind him. They were grumbling, okay, maybe a little bit more reason, but on the other hand, if your water is running out and you get to a place where there is water and now you can't drink it, that's not a good thing either, because not Pharaoh killing, but you're going to die of thirst, which is, I would think, maybe even a worse death than death by sword. So yes, they grumble. So in a sense, it's again kind of reasonable as grumbling. But then on the other hand, they forgot that God already did all these miracles. What do they still think of God? That God will lead them, then God will lead them through the Red Sea and destroy the whole Pharaoh's army to just now let them die of thirst in the desert? After all the miracles, don't they think that God can provide for them? So on the one hand, yes, reason to grumbling. On the other hand, it shows their lack of faith after seeing everything that God has done for them, to still not trust God enough that God will ultimately. So they were actually thinking like a person who believes that you can lose a Christian, a true Christian, can lose his faith, right? Can lose his salvation. Because God brought you through the desert, and now God's not strong enough to get you through. So a distrust of God, and this is a distrust of God, that God let him. It's like they have this view of God as he's this kind of a father who's an evil father, right? He will lead us through the desert, through the Red Sea, and now he's just going to play games with us by letting us die of thirst. A very evil death. So their idea then of God as a father was, well, their view of, well, certain humans can do something like that, right? Bad fathers can do something like this, but that's not who God is. So yes, the same thing as well with Christians saying that, or believing that those in the faith, those saved by God, the elect, can lose their salvation, right? They have as well the same kind of notion about God, that God can lead you and can do all of this for you, and then ultimately just dropped you before getting you home to heaven. Sad, but yeah, wrong understanding of who God ultimately is, who the Father truly is. Verse 25, and he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. So yes, Moses then, what is done a number of times, not every time, because not every time we see that Moses cried to the Lord, right? In this case again, he cries to the Lord, and he asks God what to, and God, the Father, the perfect Father, shows provision. he had to throw a log into, and not just any log, right? He has a tree. It's not like just take this and just take a part of this tree and throw it into the water kind of idea. It was not just any log he could. God showed him a specific log that he was supposed to throw into the water. Not any. So he had to do. And at least we see that Moses did as God commanded. Later on, he is not always going to do it. When he's going to hit the rock, where he was not supposed to do it. But in this case, he exactly followed. God showed him a log. He took that log, he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet, that the people could drink it. It's not bitter, now it's sweet, and they can drink it. Not brackish water anymore.